I'm Megan.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Erica.
And this is the Her Podcast.
Today we're sitting down with public speaking coach and founder of Deliver Your Best, an online public speaking program, Heather Morrison. Heather wears many hats, including keynote speaking, sidelines sports reporting, community volunteer, and mother. We're talking with Heather about how public speaking is actually a skill, meaning you can work to get better at it. How mindset and preparation are two of the biggest things that really help you. You guys, this episode is so good. Heather talks about how she had an absolute fear of public speaking, did not want to get up, was stressed about the thought of that, and now she actually is on TV and does live reporting. This episode is fantastic. Even if you're not looking to do massive public speaking, it's really key to be able to take away some tools to be able to be an effective communicator, whether that's talking to your boss, showing up on social media. It's fantastic for teachers. You guys are going to want to listen to this episode. Grab your notebooks and take some notes. Enjoy.
I'm obsessed with that color.
So then I got them done on Friday because I wanted them to be looking good for this. And so I had to go on Friday. And then the woman's like, just so you know, this chip's really easy. So like, don't do anything to chip them. And I did this big trail race on Saturday. And like at parts, it's so steep that you are basically like climbing on your hands and knees. And I was like literally trying to climb without
You should have put little, what are those little rubber thingies just on all
I just went on the
I know.
or like
they
gloves.
On cats,
Yeah.
nails,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the things they put on the ends of like.
Yeah, I should have. I still did. I chipped them a little bit, but I tried my. I tried my
very
hardest.
Is it like
I
polish?
have an interview.
Or is it gel?
It's a gel with a shellac, but the chrome apparently chips easier.
Well, looks amazing.
They look cute.
Thank you.
I just got mine done and they were like, we should do matte for fall. And I was like, matte is going to scuff. And she was like, well, no. I'm like, yes, it is. Look at your face. I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
My
it
nails
does.
have to
Unless
be
you
nice.
sit perfectly and don't do anything, then maybe it's fine. But
Right?
otherwise,
Ain't nobody doing that.
No.
We got stuff on the go.
Okay, I want to hear about what happened at the basketball game.
Oh,
Yes.
Please share it.
well, this is not my first time actually. That was my second time. I've since had I've had 3 total. So I got hit by. Okay, let me back up. There's this huge guy in the league. He's probably the biggest guy in the league. His name's Nick Ward, and he was a football player and then became a basketball player. So this guy's huge, probably 6'10", somewhere between 250 and 300 pounds. And normally I'm really good when I'm on the sidelines and I watch, but it was near the end of the game and there was a bunch of people crowded in front of me because they wanted to see. It was, honestly, it was the last possession. And he came chasing after a long ball and he missed it. And he just was such a speed that he came running into the stands. And there was probably 5 or 6 people in front of me and they just parted. And then all of a sudden he was in front of me. And I just thought, not Nick Ward. That's all. I was like, not him. And he hit me at full speed. And somehow, this is the athleticism of the players, is we collided. And somehow I was spun around. I don't even know. But all of a sudden I was facing, oh, sorry.
You're okay.
Whoa, I'm just adding some drama to my story.
Yeah. Bring it on.
Anyway, he somehow caught me by the waist and stopped himself. And then it was we had so much force that we went forward again. And then by that point I was on my hands and knees. I can't even describe, I don't know how the physics of this worked. And then I think he actually hurt me because he picked me up off the ground to kind of be are you okay?
With
I need to check
one
on.
hand.
Yeah. And I think actually that's because my shoulder was messed up for a couple days. And I think that's when he pulled it out of place, was pulling me up. But that's that was my second time. And so I've been hit 3 times.
By a player.
By a player, yeah.
Reporting.
Yes.
Sports.
But that's the only time I bled. So I
Oh
was
my gosh,
bleeding. I'd cut my hand open and then I didn't notice. And then the blood was on my chest and in my hair.
So it probably looked a lot worse.
It looked really bad. And then I had to go and do the game because it was the last possession. So I had to do my game ending interview. And I always teach people mistakes happen. You just have to be able to keep going no matter what happens. So I go to do the interview and I go to hold the mic and I realize there's blood all over my hand and the audience will be able to see it. So I'm I'll hold it in the other hand. And then I saw that my other hand was covered in blood. And then I was like, well, I just got to do it. And then right before we started, like we're waiting for the guy to throw to us. And the player and I were just like briefly chatting. And then he goes, is that blood? And it's like, hi, I'm here with Steph Smith, who just won the game. And we did the interview as if like nothing was wrong, even though I had blood all over me. But
Just a consummate professional.
it's
Trooper.
I think it's part of doing it. I also think there's a couple aspects there where like played soccer. So like you would just get up if you got hit by that. But also like being from Saskatchewan, like we're kind of tough. Like we're not a delicate little
Flowers.
Yes, exactly. So
Oh my gosh, I would have been like, leave me here to die. I'm the opposite. I would have been like milking it so long. And like, Nick, help with everything. You'd been like, Erica, you have a cut hand.
Erica comes out on a stretcher, but still
Still on
reporting.
the mic
that's right, lying down.
Coming to you live with my bloody
from the
hand.
ambulance.
Well, the next day my whole joke was like, is Nick okay? Has anyone checked in on Nick?
That's
Oh
so
my
funny.
gosh.
That's
Okay.
super impressive.
So you're on the sidelines reporting live sports.
Yes.
Back it up for us a little
Okay,
bit.
sure, yeah.
How did you get there?
So I feel like that's part of should I start all the way back?
think you
Back
should.
to the beginning?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So my degree is in fine arts and I worked in theater for a really long time. And then I took this weird side hustle into media working in radio. And it was one of those weird things where someone hands you their card and they're like, I think you would be good on the radio. So I ended up working for in Saskatoon Media Group for 3 years. So that was when I started getting into media type stuff. Went back into theater and then started working for CBC on the radio. And how I got into sports reporting was that Brad Kraft from the VP of the Rattlers called me one day and just asked me if I would do it. And I was like, I don't have a lot of on-camera experience. I know nothing about the sport of basketball. Like, I don't think I've even watched an entire game before. And he was like, that's not why we want you. Like, we just want you because we like your energy and you're really involved in the community. And that's what we want. And I just said yes, even though it really scared me. I just thought it would be great. I really wanted to develop my on-camera experience. So that's how I got into it. And I was pretty bad that first season. And then I developed on that skill the second season. And then Canada West Football, which is the University of Saskatchewan, asked me to come and do a season with them. I grew immensely because I had these coworkers who really taught me what to do and just shared all their tips for how they worked and had a level of professionalism that was just so high and really taught me a lot. So then I transferred that over to this summer, which ended up being then me being chosen to go and cover all the TSN games for the league. So not just doing games here in Saskatchewan, but traveling all over Western Canada, and then ultimately being chosen to the championship weekend, which is where I got hit by the player.
And then she got taken out.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's your full circle there.
So because you didn't know anything about basketball, did you just immediately start Googling or get somebody to come help you? And what I would be like,
Yeah.
what did you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, both times I didn't really know about football either.
Right.
So with basketball, I had really solid coworkers who, it was Simon Hyatt and Rob Lovelace doing color and play-by-play. And they were just like, we're here, we're open book, we're your resource at anything you need. And so I did do some research online. Basketball, so it's so much easier to learn than football. It's like they just try to go to the other end and put the ball in the basket. Like, you don't need to know that much more.
Football is, I'm not even going to pretend to understand football.
So then when football, I didn't know that there was even not, okay, first of all, I was like, I didn't even know there's 2 teams on a football team. And someone's like, there's like 6 because there's offense, defense, and then all the different special teams. Like, I didn't even know that.
I knew about offense, defense, but I don't know about anything else.
Yeah,
I
there's
only know what I learned on Friday Night Lights.
yes. And I hadn't even watched that. So then that was like, I was watching all these like documentaries on football teams and researching, but nothing will prepare you for being in the game.
No.
And you will look dumb. So I looked dumb. I sounded dumb so many times and still do, like, consistently. There's still so much depth to that game that I don't understand, but I don't need to. My job's to tell stories of players, not to talk about strategy. So my job's to, what's the story of this game and how can I put someone in a position to talk about them that gets that story out to the audience.
Okay, you just said something and I want to touch on it because I think this is, and now we're just going to go here so quickly, but let's talk about looking dumb.
That was where I wanted to go.
Because I do think this is an art that so many people like struggle with being able to be like, I can just look dumb and it's okay. And I'm curious if you can speak to like what that looked like for you and how you just embraced it in a way.
The best part about looking dumb is you often don't know that you look dumb while it's happening, and someone tells you later.
Oh man, I always know when I'm looking at like this is like happening right now.
I think that this is something that trips people up a lot, is this idea of like wanting to avoid it. You know, honestly, I have done it so many times that I would say it's more like I've got a callus or like a thick skin against it. There's this great quote that I love from a woman named Bodine Williams, who wrote a book called Game Face, where she says, it's okay to reveal a lack of knowledge. You just don't want to reveal a lack of self-knowledge. So it's okay to not know exactly how the game of football works. But what I wouldn't want to do is be insensitive or mean or egotistical and show that. So it's okay to make a mistake. What we don't want to do is harm people's feelings. And so that gives me this freedom to explore and be wrong without being too concerned, because deep down I know that I have good intentions and I am a good person and I want well in the world.
Dang, that was good.
Yeah, that was like a good mic drop.
I was
Seriously.
like, that's so good, because I think that is often, I think we're all really, when it comes to public speaking, and we were talking before you came in on like, what is public speaking? And we were kind of going, well, it's kind of like this, and it can look like a whole bunch of different things. And I think we're all really caught up still in like this high school, like I think about that, like, oh, what are people going to think of me? And we've like taken that from high school and really brought it into our world. And I think being able to own, I don't know this, but at least I'm self-aware. That's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. I love that.
I'm really curious because obviously from following you on social, you have said that you were scared and terrified of public speaking. So I would love for you in your own words to talk about how you felt about public speaking to begin with, and start to walk us through some of that journey of how you've come basically out on the other side and now coach people and do that full time.
Yeah, I would love to. Let me say one more thing about being revealed. So this is what Dr. Ellen Hendrickson, who writes a lot about social anxiety, talks about, is this idea of like the reveal. Like we will be, so that if we make a mistake in public or do something that where we sound dumb, is that then that will translate for people understanding that who we are is dumb, or that ultimately our worst fears about ourselves and our own identity will then be understood by the audience, right? So it's kind of like this idea that like, if you think you're unlovable and someone rejects you for a date, then the whole thing comes crumbling down, right? And it's like, yes, it's true, I am unlovable, and you fall apart like that. That's not typically how it happens with public speaking. So we have this idea that will be revealed that we don't know what we're talking about, and we're an imposter, and there's all this stuff there. But then what happens is we make a mistake and we typically recover, or nobody cares. Nobody's thinking about it too deeply. And so it's just about removing this idea that there will be or can be a reveal. And even if it does reveal a weakness or something you don't know, that's an aspect of yourself that you can work on. And that's having a growth mindset versus this fixed mindset that you are something, that you are bad, or you don't know, or you are an dramatic drum, you are an imposter. You're not. So how I got into public speaking and my journey with that was I was forced into it, to be honest. So I worked in radio, and I had been in front of crowds a lot. So I think it really surprised me that it was really hard for me. But I had been in front of crowds as a character, or I had been talking to thousands of people once through a microphone and not being myself necessarily. And so when I started working in radio, they make you MC events. It's part of the job is that you're really community based. That part I loved. What I didn't like is when I got up in front of 600 people and they're looking at me, and it's me, Heather Morrison. And I think a big part of that was the reveal. That people then know that I'm like actually like not cool, and I've got a bunch of problems at home, and like, you know,
you're human.
I've got like acne that I don't want people to see, like, you know, all of it. And so I found the experience to be really torturous. Like my problems, you know, they would start a long time out dreading the event, and then not sleeping the night before, dreading it all day, nervous while I was doing it, never feeling like I did a good job, walking away feeling like relief, but also regret. So then what happened is, the first time I emceed something, I think it was like a lunch for 600 people. And I was like so surprised by how bad it was for me. And I think my performance too. And I remember walking back to the like the studio and just thinking, okay, well, at least it was so bad, they'll never ask me to do it again. And I get back and they're like, how was it? And I don't think I even got a chance to say it was terrible. And they're like, okay, now next Saturday, there's this dinner you have to MC for 1,000 people. And it was like that for almost a year, where I was MCing event one day a week for hundreds of people, if not 1,000. And so I was losing an entire day a week to dread and nerves and this regret and feeling awful. And I finally just got fed up. I can't do this anymore. I have to figure out a way to make this work. And I went back to what I knew, which was, I mean, I feel like my tastes have like developed in self-help. And not that she isn't still the queen, but it was like Brene Brown, right? I was like, Brene, help me. Like self-help books, help me. My dad was a counselor for 30 years. And so I would say like his parenting was basically just using cognitive behavioral therapy on his teenagers. So a lot of like CBT techniques and stuff. And I still remember the moment where I started to turn the corner, which was learning to accept the nervousness that came with it. And once that piece fell into place, then I could start picking apart other pieces of it and working on them to the point where now I just feel, yes, hand me the mic. I will do a great job for you. I can manage the pressure of this situation. I can manage the self-talk that's going to happen, and I will serve your event in a really great way. It was slow at first, but now it's really built. And then what's nice is that's a foundation. So those tools and techniques that I developed for myself and continue to develop, they scale. So I continually do things like sideline reporting that scare me, but I have all the ways that I work with myself to support myself so that I can do it. To the point where I got to this national championship and I'm going to be on national television. I'm working with this guy who has been in broadcasting for 40 years. He's the Chicago Bulls play-by-play. And I'm just like, hey, nice to meet you. Okay, like, what's your workflow? How are we going to do this? And I just feel completely calm. And so that journey has been long, but it's a process and it's a repeatable process. So how I got into teaching it was that I just noticed other people had the same problem. And I would hear people say those things, or other people see how confident I was. And it really started with nonprofits would ask me to come in and just be like, can you talk to our employees? Can you help our employees? And that's how I started. I developed 1 Hour Talk. And then it grew from there.
Well, and I really love, like, from the stuff that you put out online, that you talk about public speaking as a skill, right? And I think so many of us think, okay, I'm not born with this natural talent, right? Or this innate thing inside of me, and so I cannot do it, right? And so I really like seeing that you sort of portrayed as a skill. And so that means that it's something we can learn and we can work on and get better on, right?
Yes. I always compare it to people. You don't just go out and run a marathon without any training and then go, oh, geez, I guess I'm not good at marathons. But people do that with public speaking all the time. They get up and they don't have any support for the internal process. They don't have the proper preparation techniques. And then they're like, oh, I guess I'm terrible at this. I don't have that innate talent. But you do not have to count on yourself to rise to the occasion. There's lots of stuff that you can do to make it really easy for yourself.
I love, actually, as you were speaking, I was like, oh, this is how I feel. Because so I've been emceeing events out the wazoo this year. And so CJ and I are in business together, and we went and did a speaking event last summer. Yes, it was last summer. And when we rolled up to the event, I think CJ saw a different side of me, which was like, I'm very extroverted. I did plays my entire life, like very goofy, whatever. And we roll up to this event and I'm like, I'm out. Like, I'm going to throw up in my bag. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, and she was like, okay, like, I guess I'm holding this for the team. And I think what has been hard for me is people not understanding that you can be like extroverted and like really comfortable on stage as a character, but then still get up in front of people and be like, this still makes you nervous. Yeah. And so I love that even that was a bit of your experience, because I'm like, I'm not alone. See, everybody, it's normal. It's normal to feel like, I don't know. It's a different thing. The reveal is exactly it. It's like, now you're standing up there like naked. Like, you're like, it's just me up here. And you're going to see everything about me through the next hour of me talking about whatever. Hey everybody, it's Erica. You guys know I love a quality handbag. And I recently found a luxury resale company that I have to share with you. Working Girls Boutique offers a stunning selection of gently loved luxury handbags and a safe, reliable, and secure way to purchase your dream bag. They have a strong commitment to authenticity and choose carefully curated pieces in excellent condition, which include Prada, YSL, Louis Vuitton, and they have a stunning Chanel collection, which is 100% on my dream list. One thing I love about Working Girls Boutique is how seriously they take making sure each piece is authentic. Ensuring authenticity of luxury items is a serious business, and Working Girls Boutique prides themselves on thoroughly checking every item they choose to the highest degree. They even use AI technology so you can feel super secure about the bags you are investing in. Working Girls Boutique also offers a flexible payment plan so you can secure your dream bag without breaking the bank. Plus, they gave us an exclusive discount code for the Her community, which is amazing. It's code HER50 to save $50 off your purchase. If you're like me and constantly looking for that next dream bag to add to your closet, you can find all the details on the newest designer additions on their Instagram at Working Girls Boutique, and head to their website wgboutique.com to secure your dream bag. Don't forget to use the code HER50 for $50 off your purchase, and 100% make sure to tag me because I want to see what bag you snagged.
That's why I call it the ultimate solo sport, because it really truly is just you. Like, you are the only one, and the way that you talk to yourself and support yourself is going to be so key, because you can't have someone behind you saying it's good, like you're going to be good, just keep going, right? You need to be able to do that for yourself. It's nice that you have CJ to pass it off to.
I was like, she's going white as a sheet. I was like, okay.
But it's so common. I mean, it's so common. So I work with people now worldwide, and I get people in this room, and there's people there from Paris and Dublin and all over the United States, and they're all saying the same thing, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Which is like, this is the reaction that comes up in my body when I go to do it.
Oh yeah. I hate the shakes. But then someone did tell me to embrace them and just let it be a part of. It's just like, this might just be what your body does when you get up in front of people.
Yeah. So my advice would be, you don't have to embrace them in terms that you don't have to like them.
Yeah.
But they are there. So accepting them and saying something like, I can shake and still make excellent points. I can shake and still do a good job of this. And I find that once we stop fearing the shakes will most likely go away, but it's not going to be instantaneous. Like, eventually your body will learn, oh, you don't have to do this. Like, I don't have to signal. I don't have to signal to Erica that this is a threat anymore.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Well, and I think I've seen as well, like, you've talked about how important it can be to, like, actually, instead of ramp up before possibly speaking, to actually calm yourself down. I'd love you to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think this is where most people, this is where they go off kilter, is that, how do I even want to start this? Okay. So 200,000 years ago, we go all the way back.
I wasn't expecting that, but let's do it.
But when we were this is my theory anyways, when we were developing as human beings, it really served us to be part of society, because that's how we basically stayed alive, and that's how we had access to resources. And so it would make sense to me that there would be an evolutionary bias towards people who are afraid of speaking out, because the people that did were cut out, and they cut off from access to resources, and they're dead. And so it makes sense to me that we have this primal response to, hey, this is a threat to my status quo. So this is where the two types of speakers diverge. And so CJ, sounds like you're on one side, and Eric and I are on the other, where some people go like, oh, this feels like it might be a scary thing, but it's not. And then they're like, yeah, it's fine. I did it once and it was fine, so it's good. And then there's people who go and they feel that threat response and it scares them. And then what happens is they start to fear that fear response. And then they get afraid of the fear. And then their fear of the fear starts ramping them up even more. And they get caught in this cycle where once they think about public speaking, the nervous system activates, because it's like, oh, hey, yeah, I got it. Like, this is a threat. Like, oh, we got good things, Erica. Like, we got a house, we got food. Like, do you really need to do this? And they're trying to talk you out of it. And so a big part of it is having that conversation with yourself and just saying, I appreciate that you're trying to keep me safe. Like, your nervous system is absolutely functioning as it should. It thinks you're under threat. It's trying to warn you off. And so that's great. that's awesome that you're functioning normally. And then it's just helping yourself understand that in 2023, public speaking is not a threat to our livelihood. I mean, there's cancel culture, which is like a slightly different thing. But again, go back to that lack of knowledge versus lack of self-knowledge. You know, you're probably not under threat from actually losing anything from public speaking, except suffering through perhaps a little bit of embarrassment.
Yeah. I love the way that you go ahead and frame that.
Well, and I think what's really important to touch on for our listeners is we're talking about public speaking, but really it's about, well, I don't know, maybe you can speak to this. Like we were saying, it's not, because I think there are going to be some people who are like, well, I never public speak, because they're picturing emceeing in front of 600 people or leading, you know, a TED talk. Like that's what they're picturing right now. But public speaking is really speaking in public in front of any form of person, right? And so I know for us, like in social media, because we have a social media management business, like one of the biggest things that people come to us about is they're like, I can't get on my stories. Like I can't show my face. And I'm wondering if you can speak to kind of almost like that smaller scale public speaking and how to work through some of that.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. I think it's all of it's public. What we're doing right now is public speaking, making presentation work. Even something like making a phone call can be considered public speaking. And for some people too, what's interesting is like, so that person has met their threshold. That's where they become uncomfortable. Whereas like someone else, it's like they can hop on their stories, you can do this podcast, and then your threshold is crowds. Like then you hit your threshold and you don't have that comfortability anymore. So it's interesting. So I kind of think when we get to that threshold, I really hope everyone can see my visual demonstration. I'm holding my hand.
Watch the YouTube.
Go subscribe on YouTube, everybody.
Before we hit our threshold, what's interesting is most likely the way that we're talking to ourselves is, this is something that I've done before, and this is something that I'm good at, and this is something that I'm learning about, and every time I do it, I improve. And then we hit that threshold, and then all of a sudden it's, I'm not good enough, I don't know how to do this, what if something bad happens? So for someone, for wherever you are, and if it's getting on your stories, it's just unpacking that way that you are talking to yourself and making the switch to something that's warm and realistic, which is most likely what you're doing when you're below your threshold. And I would also say scale that fear. So perhaps maybe hopping on your stories might work. So maybe you can get on there and you can talk and you can see that nothing bad happens to you. Again, this would be the CJ part. Where it's like,
This would be like jump in and see if it works.
Yeah. And you can like, you know, they say like the cure to anxiety is exposure. For some people it is. And so you could try that. But if that's too much, what is something smaller that you can do that you could try to survive to then take another step up? So maybe it's posting a picture of your face with some text and see how that goes and see how that feels, and do that for long enough until you feel really comfortable doing that. And then post a video of yourself where you're not talking, and then just see how that feels. And then eventually you can build up to one where you say something. And for a lot of people, that will help them so that they can keep that really warm and realistic self-talk going. And so that way it's like you can just edge over your threshold in a way that's really supported and not going to just reinforce the same old story.
Right.
No.
So then when because if you were like me, like, I mean, you're clearly now so comfortable. Was there a specific speaking engagement where you were like, I've got this and now I know I can do this? Or do you still experience the nerves?
Oh, I definitely do all the time. It's more that I know how to manage them. And what's interesting is that I also have, you know, I do like trail running or other races. And so I try to manage my nerves in the same way that I do for public speaking for those. Like I use the same tools, but I'm not as practiced. So I just did a race on the weekend. The night before, you're not fit enough, you didn't train enough. What if you're not going to finish the race? And if this was public speaking, I would have enough self-awareness that I would be like, nice try. Nice try, fear thoughts. This is just a thought habit. I know that's not true. And besides, if something happens, I know I can manage it. But with running, I'm not at that place yet. So I go, like, I'm trying to say, these are fear thoughts. These are thoughts I'm having because I'm scared and I'm nervous and I care. But I wasn't able to stop them from coming up. So I actually just had to sit in acceptance, which is like sort of a lower level as we progress in our journey as public speakers. I just had to let them happen. And I had to realize like, this is just how I'm going to feel before a race. And I would say that the first time it happened, I didn't even know what was happening at all. And I just believed them all. I was like, I'm not fit enough. And what if something happens, right? So at least I know, at least I have awareness now. But yeah, I use these tools all the time. I would say that I'm like very fast with them, very quick. And I also know my defaults. Like a lot of times it's my outfits, like what I'm going to wear. My nerves will manifest in like, I don't have style. I don't know what to wear. I'm going to look.
Oh my gosh, that's the only time I'm feeling very confident because I'm like, I know I look real good.
You always do.
I'll
look really
distract
good.
everybody with my sparkly outfit and they won't hear my voice.
Yeah, which is actually a really great way to get into it, is to like lean into that comfortability part. But yeah, often I'll be like, no, I'm not nervous, but I did try on 70 different things, right? I'm like, okay, maybe I am.
How do you set yourself up like day of? Like, I'm so curious. You just referenced like I have the tools in my toolbox. What are the tools that you pull out regularly?
Sure. So I'll go through some mental ones, but the first thing that I want to say is that preparation is also an overlooked part of public speaking. So what level of preparation do you need to do in order to make sure that you are going to feel really comfortable? And for someone like me who's been out a long time, I prepare a lot less for MC gigs than I used to do, but it's just making sure that you've actually and understand your material and you've gone over it enough so that you feel comfortable in your body, because you know you're going to have that nervous reaction, but you're like, okay, I could still do this even if someone was like screaming in the back, like a baby was screaming in the back room, distracting me. I still could do my talk. Like that's the level that you want to be at. That's often a misstep. People procrastinate on preparation because they don't want to feel the feelings that they're going to feel when they're public speaking.
Well, and how do you prepare? Like, is it, I'm sure it's not like a time amount, you know what I mean? But like, do you have a couple tips for preparation?
Yeah. So I often say it's like a length of rope, like right amount is the right amount for the job. And what you want to do is chase the feeling, that feeling of knowing that you did everything you could and feeling really solid. So for myself, it's getting to that place where I've reviewed, like for myself with an MC gig, it would be reviewing the material. So understanding what's expected of me, the outline, and then making sure I had an idea of different little personal remarks that I could make to make it interesting. So having done that, that's as simple as I would go. If I was less experienced, I would do a lot more than that. But you really want to go in with the sense that I did do everything that I could. You also want to prepare for things to go wrong, like getting hit by a basketball player or something like on a slightly smaller scale, so that you know what you're going to do when it does. Or also that you're going to know that when it does go wrong, that's actually just part of public speaking. Things go wrong all the time and it doesn't mean anything. Most important is our reaction and not letting our nervous system ramp up, but more just having that, being prepared to talk to yourself in a way that's going to let you continue. And then the day of, the biggest thing that I could ever recommend in terms of public speaking to improve ability is accepting exactly how you feel and accepting the reality of the situation. So an example or an analogy I make is if you were walking by my house and you saw that my kitchen was on fire and you knocked on the door and I didn't answer, what would you do?
Call 911
Go in.
or go in or something.
Yeah, you probably knock louder. You try to get in. You'd be calling 911. And if I still didn't answer, you'd be breaking down that door, right? You're going to save my life.
Yeah.
And you got to think about it as if then it's same day or sorry. It's like same situation. It's like you see that my house is on fire and you're walking by and you knock on the door and I open the door and you say, your house is on fire. Like, you got to get out. And I say, oh no, it's just a hologram. I'm just getting something ready for Halloween. And in both those situations, like, you're the nervous system. So you are trying to say, this is happening. Like, you are under threat. You are under threat. And you are not listening to yourself. That nervous system is just going to ramp up trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
But if you say, I hear you, I understand, but guess what? It's actually not the threat that you think it is. I promise you I'm safe. It's like, that's the calming sensation. So oftentimes it's that conversation with myself. If I have nerves, sometimes I don't even anymore, which is a surprise to me. But if I have them, it's just saying like, okay, I feel a little nervous. And understanding that nerves mean that you care, which is a great thing. And that they also give you free energy. Because sometimes you might feel tired or flat, or you're like, your kids kept you up. And then all of a sudden it's like, I know that I can count on that adrenaline to actually help me have a really good performance. Ooh. Yes. And then after that, it's identifying thoughts of self-doubt and acknowledging them, and then if you can, replacing them with ones that are supportive, because that's a huge part of it too. So just saying, you know, like when you have that fear thought of like, what if I completely freeze? Then I will take a sip of water and I will look at my notes and I will keep going. Right. And so it's just, you know, having that conversation with yourself to keep yourself calm. Yeah.
All of these are self things you can do on your own. Do you rely on any like other people? Like, are you a talker with a good friend when you have something coming up? Because you're speaking about public speaking, but I really feel like what you're talking about is just for anyone who's walking into a situation that they're nervous about, right? Or that they have to, I mean, you know, public speak, have a meeting with their boss that they're not feeling great about, hear these tips and be like, what do I need to know? So my question though is, do you rely on any outside sources?
Well, all my life, you know, I mean, you can't grow up with a dad who will like sit you down and be like, what are your feelings? And
I also think you and I grew up with very similar dads, because mine was like a mediator his whole life. He was on our podcast, and now I'm like, now you all know why I'm the way I am.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I know. All the time. I always think of my job though as to enable people to be able to support themselves in those moments, because you can talk in the morning to your partner about how scared you are about that talk, but when you're standing outside the door, it's just you and yourself. So you have to be able to have that conversation with yourself. That said, you know, one time I completely fell apart before last year. I had to do the Hardy Cup, which was like a championship football game. No, I'm like, I can't believe I was so nervous. But I fell apart. I was like, I still don't really know this game that well. I can't believe it's me. I was crying. I was so nervous. I couldn't believe it. I haven't experienced that in a long time. And I was talking to my best friend about it, and she said the most beautiful thing, which is just that you don't have to be perfect. It's not your ability to be perfect that has, you know, that I admire in you. It's your willingness to show up and be a beginner again and again and again. And what she was able to do there was just reframe it for me in a way where I could only be successful. If I showed up, I was successful no matter what, because I was being the beginner. I didn't have to be perfect. And that was so helpful. So yeah, I do rely on other people and myself.
That's so good. I love that. Willing to be a beginner. Because I think so often we fall into a pattern of, I know, like I had emceed like a few events over the last little while, and then I was feeling like really confident. Then we went to that one, the fashion show.
Oh yeah.
And it was like 2 seconds before I was going on, my hand, like it just like, and I was like, no, I'm good at this. Like, what the heck? Like, I got mad because I was like, I'm prepared. Like, I have everything ready to go. And I thought I was good. And now all of a sudden, so I think reframing it, like, if you're just willing to be like, okay, this nerve is still here, which means you're willing to like be a beginner. That's beautiful.
Well, and the thing that I would say there is that, you know, my therapist would call it a thought habit. So your thought habit came back. And instead of saying, oh, that's something wrong, it's like, oh, here's my old pattern. My old pattern's flaring up. And this is how I feel. Like you got it right there when you're saying like acceptance. And that's it. And it's like the same thing happened to me with the Hardy Cup. It was like my old thought pattern came up. And so there's this quote that I just heard that I love, which I think I'm just going to like tattoo on myself. But it's a Phil Tetlock. And he said, our beliefs aren't treasures to be guarded, but hypotheses to be tested. And so I like that because I really believe that, you know, this mindset, oh my gosh, I'm a quote machine here, but Liz Nicholas, a mindset coach, said, you know, a belief is just a practice thought. So the problem is that if we practice the thought enough, it becomes a belief, and that's why we have to test it. And your brain is going to be like, this is the easiest thing to think. We've always thought this. Let's keep thinking it. And so to break that apart and remove it and not have it flare up when you get challenged in a new way is really difficult. And that's why you have to understand that our thoughts are not true. Our thoughts are real, but they're not always true. And so you need to be able to identify that and then question whether you want to buy into that thought.
Okay, so you're working with people, and obviously you're telling us here, like, okay, like you can think of it like a thought habit or, you know what you've said here, but when you're training someone, what's something practical, if you can share, that you're actually having them do to get over nerves or accept the nerves or prepare?
Yeah. So, well, let's stick with thoughts because I do think it's one of the most interesting ones. So that Liz Nicholas that I just mentioned. So she has a tool, it's called thought analysis, where you ask yourself 3 questions, which would be, what do I think about this? What does that create for me? And what do I want to think about this? And so an example I use for my own life is I use that thought analysis tool to get to that championship weekend this summer. So I used to have thoughts about sideline reporting, which is I don't know anything about these sports. I'm too old. Most people get to this much earlier in their career, and that they were all just really negative. Nobody wants to hear from me. Nobody's interested in seeing me succeed. And what did that thought create for me? Well, it was real negativity. It was heaviness around it, lack of motivation. And once I identified that those were just thoughts I'm having and not necessarily truth for myself or for anyone else involved, I sat with this idea of what would I like to think about this? And I was able to come up with things like, with my age comes experience and wisdom. So I can manage difficult situations, including like getting hit by a basketball player or like many other things that have come up. Like when a player runs away from you right before you go live to air, right? You need to be able to not panic in those situations. I don't know these sports, but I love sports in general and I love to learn. So this can be really exciting. And why not me? Why does it have to be anyone else? It could be me. And then I felt motivated. And then I felt really excited about it. And my curiosity, I began like leaning into my curiosity and doing more research. And that was the thing, is once I changed my thoughts, I took action. So then it was reaching out to people, telling them that I was interested in going to championship weekend, that I was interested in furthering this, and then treating every single game as if it was that. So taking it very seriously and raising my professionalism. So it led to success. So that tool, those 3 questions, which are, what do I think about this? What does that create for me? And what do I want to think about this? Can really just reframe and flip a lot of things for you. And it's simply just choosing to have a different thought.
Well, it seems like a lot of that plays into positive self-talk as well, and like reframing what you're saying to yourself, from the negative thought of like, oh, I think this about myself, or like, why would they choose me, to being like the positive side of it, right? And so I'm wondering, does that play into it a lot as well?
Sometimes I feel like that's the majority of my job, is just like pulling people out of this. So instead of positive, I say warm and realistic, because I think that we'd never want to deny reality. And so it might not actually be something positive that you're experiencing. So you want to acknowledge what's actually happening, and then give yourself a little love or support, like your best friend or a really good parent. Like sometimes I say, you got to parent yourself. So the challenge for most people that I have found, which was incredibly surprising, though I understood because I feel like I went through it too, is people's unwillingness to be kind to themselves and their unwillingness to say supportive things to themselves.
Interesting.
They think that, or we get stuck in this idea that if we're hard on ourselves, we'll do better. Like if we don't push ourselves, then we won't move forward at all. And there's actually no scientific study that's ever proved that being harsh on yourself works.
I was in this, like a conference once, and the person was talking about something like this, and they're like, okay, I want you to like turn to the person. It was like a female conference, and they're like, turn to the person beside you and like, tell them they're beautiful. And it was like so easy, like, you're so beautiful. And then it was great. And and then it said, now I want you to turn to the person beside you and say like, I'm so beautiful. And it was just like,
the room went silent.
The room was just like, I can't do that. No. Yeah. I can't say that. Like, I can't say that about myself. Like, and it was such what you're saying, which is almost this like, I can't say that. Like that's, and I don't know if that comes down to like some form of us that are like, we really, that seems a little pompous, or like, I can't speak kindness to myself because now I'm just like full of myself. And it's like, maybe you should be a little full of yourself, right? We should be the most proud of ourselves, really. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Well, no, I feel like I felt the reaction in my body when you say, turn to someone and say, I'm so beautiful. I'm like, I could never.
Right?
There's no way. I can never do that. But I think, okay, for me, this is so tricky. We have this natural aversion to thinking well of ourselves. And I think there's a part of it where it's like, what if I believed in myself and then I failed? Like I'd look so dumb. So it's better just to like shut it all down. I wouldn't want anyone to ever think that I think well of myself. Yeah. And I think we have a bit of tall poppy syndrome in our society, right? Like, oh, you never heard of, it's like when the one poppy grows too tall, you cut it off. Crabs in a bucket, maybe a better analogy. Chaos.
What's that one?
It's funny because I think we're in the same. Crabs in a bucket is this idea that the crabs can't crawl out of the bucket because they pull each other down.
And if they just okay, I get it.
Yeah. But I think it's this. Yeah. Anyways, people really struggle. We really, really struggle with it. But I also, what I try to coach people into, and I mean, my gosh, if I could resolve this issue for myself too, I would. So it's a work in progress always. But it's this idea that nobody actually benefits from not believing in yourself. Nobody does. Not you, for sure. Not the people that you think poorly of you. You're like, I can't believe in myself because Shannon hates me. And she thinks I can't do it. Well, it's like, Shannon doesn't actually benefit from me not trying to do the thing either. Like Shannon's not thinking about me.
Yeah.
I also, my cousin Shannon, I'm not talking about you. It's just a name.
Who's Shannon?
Shannon's been very supportive, actually. I shouldn't have used
Wrong
that
name.
You were like, I'm trying to give the Karens a break.
Yeah.
Poor Karen.
Have you ever wished managing people was like putting together an IKEA cabinet? Challenging, but you were provided with all the instructions and tools to complete the task? Then listen up. If you're looking to take your leadership skills to the next level, we've got something special just for you. Introducing Lead From Here, the brainchild of three incredible women, Julia Seguin, Bridget Turner, and Leah Gregg. These ladies are on a mission to revolutionize leadership development. Imagine a world where being a supervisor isn't a daunting task, but more like assembling, like I said, an IKEA cabinet, challenging, yet with clear instructions and tools. Well, Lead From Here is here to make that a reality. On January 26, 2024, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, they're hosting a one-day practical leadership workshop from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Parktown Hotel. And guess what? Lunch is included. This workshop is designed for supervisors, business owners, entrepreneurs, or anyone working with people who want to tap into their team's talents, reduce performance challenges, and build a cohesive team. You'll learn practical strategies like how to connect with your team, give and receive feedback, build trust, manage change effectively, and leverage your strengths while minimizing biases. Okay, a quick side note. If you know me, CJ, you probably know that I absolutely love personal development. That's precisely why I'm already signed up and will be attending this conference myself. I had the pleasure of meeting with Bridget over Zoom, and I was truly blown away by her thoughtful and insightful advice on business. Lead From Here understands the hustle and bustle of management. They'll help you seamlessly weave leadership into your role because, let's face it, practical leadership is the key to success. This is not your typical leadership program. It's engaging, filled with real-world examples, and offers a chance for genuine connection. So whether you're a new supervisor, a seasoned leader looking to grow, or just someone wanting to add some leadership skills to your toolkit, Lead From Here has you covered. And here's the kicker. Use the discount code HER20 to get 20% off your registration for the Practical Leadership Workshop. Ready to lead with confidence and empathy? Don't miss out on this opportunity. Join Lead From Here at the Practical Leadership Workshop on January 26, 2024 in Saskatoon. For more information and to register, visit their website at leadfromhere.ca. That's lead, L-E-A-D, from F-R-O-M, here, H-E-R-E.ca. And be sure to follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Lead From Here. Unlock your leadership potential with Lead From Here. We'll see you there.
But the other people that don't benefit are the people that would benefit from you believing in yourself. So it's like, if I'd never believed that I could do this or help people as a public speaking coach or gotten over my fear and put myself out there on Instagram, I wouldn't have helped. Like, I'm in my 18th cohort of my program. So that's like,
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm almost 100 people that I've resolved this issue for. And it's changed their lives. And that's not even talking about the people that take like my webinars and my smaller programming and my talks. So I mean, think about all those people you're leaving behind. And also just think about like when you see someone who's lived their life, like when you see someone who's done the things that you want to do and you're like, it's possible. And so It's like, just, I don't know, just go do it. Like, just believe in yourself.
All you have to do is believe.
You're beautiful. Believe in yourself.
Yes,
Believe in
yeah.
yourself.
Tell yourself you are beautiful. Yeah.
Look in the mirror, hold it up.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to big public speaking?
Yeah, I think that it's talent. It's an innate talent, and it's not something that people can develop. I think also this idea that, one of the biggest myths is that there's something wrong with you if it scares you. I think that there's just something that you just don't have the right information that you need. Like, there is no good or bad about it. You just need more information. And that, when we see a good public speaker, that we're seeing someone who is just performing and showing off a skill, not a skill, but showing off a talent that they have, when really we're just seeing the result of work, right?
Well, and holding them, I feel like when I see a really good public speaker, I almost like hold them to this like above standard of like, I could now never do that.
Yeah. But you have to think about, when I would see people on TV, I'd think of them as like superhumans or other people.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And
right?
then I'm like, you guys, I'm taking out my own trash, right? Do you know what I mean? And I'm like crying sometimes because I messed up something with my son, I cannot express how just like an ordinary day-to-day human I am, who has a skill set that allows her to be on television in a comfortable manner.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, you don't have to be somebody else. You can be yourself and then also do that and just be showing off work that you've done.
When people come to you and join your cohort, are they generally like people who are going to do MC work, or like who is joining the cohort? I'm so curious because I could see so many different people needing to have this help.
Yeah. So I like to say I help professionals on the rise. So it's often people, because it's all different. Like, I have lots of people that work for themselves, but a lot of people that work for companies that want to progress, and they can see themselves getting really far. They're ambitious people, they're hard workers, but they're stuck because of this one thing. So they can't take the promotion because it involves a lot more public speaking, or they can't present themselves. Or the biggest one, which is something I wanted to bring up when you said I just passed it on to CJ, is lots of people allowing other people to get credit for their work, because whoever talks about it gets the credit, and it's just how it is. And
well, then CJ should have spoke, because she did a lot of work on that presentation.
so there it goes. It worked out.
Rightly so. No, that's actually so true, right? Because it's kind of like, you end up seeing, people only see the end result, right? That's what they see. So whoever's holding it at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's who did it.
Yeah. And that person can acknowledge you. Like, you can be up and you can be, it's just whoever front facing is going to be associated, even if they acknowledge you. Like, an example from my own life, which was the best advice that I never took until it was too late, was that I used to run a company with a partner, and I was always just let him speak because it was just easier. Like, I don't know. And I wasn't even really that afraid of public speaking, but it was just sort of like easier to let him take the mic. And this woman said to me, she's like, you need to get up there. And I'm like, no, he thanks me. And she's like, no, you need to get up there and you need to be thanking him. And in my mind, I'm like, that's not necessary. People know. And then I was at an event where our company was recognized, and the person was like, oh, this is the people from the company are here. And they asked him to stand, and just him. And I was sitting right next to him. Like, I was right there. And I thought, I need to get up in front of people. Like, I need to be talking, because this have been equal effort. And I do not blame this person that was recognized at all, but it's like, it's just really hammered home for me, this idea that if you are not getting up in front of people and talking about your work and talking about your ideas, you're going to be overlooked. And I see this a lot in businesses, especially like mom and pop businesses. So like, women will come to me in their 60s and say, I just always let my husband do it so easier, and now I can't even start because I'm so terrified. But then the exciting thing is, and then they say, but that's over.
Not today.
Not anymore. Yeah.
Shannon.
Yeah.
Shannon.
I am so sorry, Shannon. I wish I'd picked a different name.
It's going to be my new go-to.
That makes so much sense. The other thing I've heard you talk about is taking care of your audience.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah.
So, okay, that's what I wanted to say, Erica, when you brought up the fact that this work is really self-focused, is that we do all this stuff on us, and then we just actually have to let that go. And it's not about us anymore. It's about our audience. It's all about them. It's
Yeah.
about their experience. And that's also why I say that we don't need to do a lot of work on terms of what's my pacing and what's my volume going to be. If you're genuinely trying to communicate and you're trying to be understood by your audience and you care about their experience, all of that stuff takes care of itself. When you're at a dinner party telling a story, or when you're talking with a friend, you're not thinking like, am I speaking slowly enough? Am I making enough eye contact? What are my hands doing? Like, we don't think about any of that. We're just communicating, genuinely getting our point across and being heard and understood. And so that's what we need to do when we get in there. And we have to also understand the whole taking care point comes because we are in the power position. And so we are the one, even though we're the ones that are afraid, we need to overcome that feeling because we need to make it a good experience for them because they have given us their time and their attention and they want to feel comfortable. So that's on us to create that, whether we feel like we want to or not.
Like, how are we creating that? Like, obviously I'm assuming like authenticity, right? Like actually genuinely caring for them. But I'm like, what does that look like?
I mean, a mindset that I have is this idea of I'm okay with you looking at me and I'm comfortable with that. And often too, just bringing, I don't want to use the word pep, but a bit of energy to it. So I have this idea that the first time I speak in front of crowds, so if I'm emceeing an event or just the first time I get on the mic, I come in with this attitude, energy of you are going to be okay. This is going to be a good experience for you because I am confident and comfortable in this position. And so when you look at me, you can relax. Your nervous system can relax. You don't have to worry about me at all. And so I think that that's part of it. But what was that other word you said, CJ? You just said something there. No, I can't remember what it was.
Well, because I'm thinking like if you get up and you know someone's nervous, you end up being a little like, ooh, is it going to be okay? And then that's maybe when some of that like audience care goes out the window.
Yeah, I think
Authenticity?
Okay. Yeah. Authenticity.
There we go.
Yes, okay. So talking about that audience care. Okay. So I think what goes wrong there, or when we worry about showing that our voice is shaking or showing that our nervousness and how that will come across the audience, it's actually okay to be that way and still do your job. Where we go wrong is when we want the audience to make us feel better. That's the responsibility that they don't want. And that makes them feel cringe. It's kind of like, I attribute it to like a parent-child relationship. The child never wants to know that the parent doesn't have it all together. They never, because that makes them feel like in danger. And so I think that's what audiences feel, where it's like, oh, this speaker needs me to make them feel better. I don't want that responsibility. And like, how long is this talk? And are they going to really go off the rails? Like, that's when that self-doubt starts creeping in. So it's okay to just be nervous and then do the job. I mean, some of the best speech, those are the reels that go viral on Instagram, is when it's a nervous like teenager doing a speech, but they're so genuine and they're not saying like, make me feel better about being here, but through their nerves, they're communicating their message. And that would be that authenticity piece.
I have a question about so you step into the room and you get on the mic and you're feeling really good, but then all of a sudden, or maybe you step into the room and the energy feels off. Like, how do you manage when you have a job to do, but that crowd of 1,000 people, there's just like some sort of wild energy or dead energy, or you know what I mean? Like, how do you navigate that and not get in your head about it?
Okay, this is the great question. And the thing about this is there's actually multiple answers. So there's some situations where it's like, just hammer through. You just get in there and do your job and get out, and that's fine. So there's like a dinner here in Saskatoon where the audience just talks through the whole thing, and the woman that MCs it, bless her heart, she does such a good job of just being like talked over for the whole evening. But I remember going up there thinking like, they're gonna listen to me, and no, they did not. So it was just like, just say your piece and get down. This is not the vibe of the evening. The second half, though, where I say like, where you do want to try to control that or influence it, would be very quickly, I would try to understand why.
Right.
So what is the reason? So a really good example I have of this is when I was hired to come in and do a public speaking talk, and I hopped on the Zoom and everyone looked just like completely deflated, like this, like exhausted faces. And I realized that this was like their fifth session drama. I always hit it right when I'm being dramatic. I love it.
I love it.
Their 5th session of the day on Zoom. And so it's like they were just exhausted. And I thought, okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
You're good.
I thought, okay, my job now is I got to just triple my energy because these people have none. So I'm going to have to be extra engaging. I'm going to have to lean forward. I'm going to have to directly address people and bring it out of them. And I was able to pull some energy out of these people. And I think they were also like, okay, this can be different than what we've had all day. But questions I would be asking myself if the audience was, did something just happen? Did something just happen that really shifted the mood that needs to be addressed or needs to be resolved before people can improve, before people can change their energy and try to work towards that?
So my selfish question is then like when emceeing, when you're like up there and you're vibing and then the crowd, like we did one and we were like, I was like, I don't know if I blacked out or if I didn't hear people. Cause I was like, I thought we were really funny. And then afterwards there was one table that came out to us and was like, you guys were like unreal. And we were like, really? Because we heard nothing. We heard nothing at the front of the room. Like we thought it was not the vibe. And we were like, okay, like pivot our approach to this. But I'm curious then on like, how do you read the room in that kind of instance where you're like, oh, I brought this energy that's now not being matched?
Yeah. I think, okay, this is a really tricky question, I have to be honest. And some part of it is intuitive. And it sounds like you did the right thing by changing your approach because you do have to accept what people are giving you. But there's other parts of that. I mean, okay, if I knew I really wanted to hype a crowd, I would come in really prepared to do that. So I'm gonna be working on my jokes. Like I'm not just gonna hope that I come up with something. I'm gonna be coming armed right off the top in order to do that. Another thing that you can do that's really well received is this idea of making what you're doing feel as if it's extremely relevant to the people that you're talking to.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah. So often I see this with Zoom lectures is this idea that like I now present to you and you sit on the Zoom and watch. You can easily, and actually this is a brain hack that I didn't invent the brain hack, but I translated it to public speaking, which is this idea that when something's salient to us, we get a hit of dopamine. So when your brain's like, the example that they used in the book I read, which was The Molecule of More, talked about this idea if you were looking at a newspaper and you saw the name of your high school, you'd be like, oh, like what happened over at Aidan Bowman Collegiate. Right. But if you were reading the newspaper and you saw your name, you'd be like, whoa, what's going on, right? Those are like that dopamine saying, pay attention to this. And so what I thought was, okay, well, we can do that to people as MCs or lecturers or public speakers, which is make them say like, oh, this is for me. And that way we give them those little dopamine hits that wake them up and give them energy. So ways that I do that is genuinely commenting on how people are reacting. Nothing ever negative. So never point out if someone's like tilting over sideways.
You look really bored.
But more saying like, okay, you're nodding. You understand. Or, oh, this is something that's happened to you before. Hey, or those kind of things. And once you start interacting with them, makes it feel like she cares. Or this person cares that this is that I get what I'm supposed to get from this.
That's so interesting because I was just thinking back to like one of the last events that I was at and someone was emceeing and we were sitting at the very like back table and there was only like 4 of us and the MC took time to engage with the back table, like realizing we were like off in the corner in a small amount. But then instantly you're like, oh, okay, like I want to be engaged in the rest of this and like not tap out. So that's very interesting.
Yes.
I feel seen.
In Calgary.
Yeah.
It was for a teen challenge.
Oh, I was like, where were you?
Erica's like,
it was Heath Brown.
You did something without me.
There. I'm like, when were we at the back table?
Oh my God. Who put us at the back?
Put us at the back.
No.
I'm totally kidding.
But that's the MC saying, that's the MC saying, I want this whole room. Yeah. And I want to engage with this whole room. And so they did a really good job of that. The other thing that you can do is, which is a really great technique, is make some sort of joke or statement that acknowledges your participation in the event, not as someone who's up in front. So something that unifies you with your audience as someone who's experiencing the event too. One of the speeches that I show in my course, and we talk about it, is Sir Ken Robinson, who talks about education. And he's doing this TED talk, and he's a brilliant man. Like, he's a sir. He's been knighted by the queen. Oh my God, I almost said king. I'm switching over so quick. It was queen still then. But he you know, right off the top, he goes like, it's been an amazing day, hasn't it? I thought, maybe I'll just leave. So it's like this idea that he's been intimidated by all the incredible speeches too, right? Yeah. And that immediately disarms his audience. We are one. Me and Sir Ken are one.
Yeah.
We're the same person. And that can align you really quickly too.
I think you've shared some tips, even with that tip, like I think communication, and we've been talking about this a lot, is like shared experience. And really when you can get on a shared experience, there's a bit of disarming that happens immediately, even if it's conflict. Like to be able to come and not like it's an amazing day that we're having this argument, but like I feel the same. You immediately kind of go, okay, we are actually one. We know where the other one is coming from. And so even though you're speaking from a public speaking standpoint, I really do think that there's a lot in here that people are going to pull from and be like, I now know how to like communicate better.
Yeah. Oh, and I like that idea of, especially within conflict and establishing structure too. Like when you have a conversation with someone and say, I really care about you. And that's why I want to have this conversation, because I want to make sure our relationship's the best it can be. And that's in a way what you're doing as a public speaker is like setting the expectations and the structure of the relationship.
I've just started to tell people, and maybe it's a technique to help with my nerves, when people are like, oh, you're emceeing, are you nervous? And I'm like, I direct traffic. Like I really just make sure everyone know. And I'm always like playing off like, okay, like I'm here to make sure there's no accidents. People know where they need to go. People understand the room. And if I get a good joke in there, then great. We're having a good time. Right.
Yeah. And especially that situational humor that unites you. But I mean, I think actually, Erica, that's a brilliant mindset, because there's too many weddings that I go to where people MC and it's like, it's the them show and it's about them being entertaining. And I always think like, I mean, I MC as many weddings as I go to almost. And it's, my job is to move this evening along. And then I try to like massage it with like these heartfelt or funny comments that name things that are happening. And that's it. And that's really taking care of your audience, because it's taking the focus off you and your own performance and making it about the experience of everyone. And then I think when you do that, the end result is someone will say, you're a really good public speaker.
Yeah, I think I've been trying to, maybe this is a tip for you wedding MCers, because I just did one in the summer. And I told my husband, because it was actually the first time he saw me public speak, was at this wedding, which was really fun. But I said to him, I'm finding the key with this situation is to pick up on one thing the person said in their speech that I can like either make a joke about or be like, how beautiful.
That's
and then
smart.
Like, yes, I'm like, I just have to remember one thing from the speech and we're good.
That's really smart. Would you say that the biggest mistake, quote unquote, that people make in public speaking is making it about themselves?
I think it's a common one that I see a lot, where it's really about I would say it's like a soft mistake. And that,
okay, what's a soft mistake?
I said I want to be gentle for people who are mean. So there's like the gentle, soft side of this mistake, where it's like that people think it's about how they're coming across, and then they get way too ramped up and in their heads, and it prevents them from just like doing their job. And then there's like the hard mistake, where it becomes about them and their ego and feeding it and making themselves feel good. I would say either way, if it's about you, it's a mistake. Like if you're public speaking, you're in service and you have the most precious thing in the world, which is people's time and attention. And so you need to be really responsible with that. I think you can do it in other ways, but if you want a long and successful career and you want to walk away feeling good, make it about other people.
That is such a mind shift. And maybe that feels obvious, but I'm like, even just, you said like in service.
Yeah.
To think that you're actually up there providing a service for someone. And it's not about you being like, I'm about to share all my knowledge with you peasants. And you should be so grateful that I have graced you with my presence.
The queen has arrived.
Hello. It's really about like, hey, I have something that I think will benefit you and I really want you to know it. That's awesome. I love that.
Well,
I
take
love
that
that
to
too.
any other aspect of your life. Like
Yes.
anyone you meet personally has this idea that you should be like so happy that you get to meet them and that they have everything, and like you can teach them nothing. Like that's a terrible dynamic. And so and I'm sorry that I can't quote someone on this because I actually forget where I heard it originally. But one of the things I've used, and I use it daily, is make a connection, not an impression. So when you're up on stage, you never want to get this idea. You never want to try to control how people see you. But rather, if you connect with them, I find that the impression that they get from you is genuinely a good one. And so I use this not just on stage, but I use this when I meet intimidating people often. So I MC like the Kinsman Sports Celebrity Dinner. I had to go in and meet all these like Blue Jays and people that work for national sport organizations. And I just told myself, make a connection, not an impression. And so actually that often means I don't talk a lot because otherwise I get in those situations and I'm like trying to make jokes or trying to like say funny things or just show how much knowledge I have. But I genuinely find that if I just sit back and I go, oh, you have kids. How many kids do you have? Oh, that's such a great age. Yeah, my son's that age too. And like, man, bedtime's a nightmare. You know, like that kind of stuff. It's like totally mundane. And then sometimes you connect with the person and sometimes you don't, but you very quickly figure out who you actually connect with, as opposed to me trying to ram my like importance or coolness or uniqueness down their throats. It just doesn't work. And so I've used that a lot. And then the outcome I find is just really great. And then this whole other side part is that you come across looking like you're really confident. And it's just like
cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, it's just a result of what you're trying to like do to moderate your own behavior, is that you look confident, whereas inside you might be really nervous, but you just have your focus, which is connect.
I love that. And I think that's applicable to everyday life for many people, even as far back as going on the Instagram stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you shift your mindset to make a connection, not an impression, that really does take the pressure off of you and the situation too.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't even remember now. I'm the worst of this. I met a country music artist at a Hilberg and Burke event. He was like a surprise guest. And then we all got to meet him afterwards. And I remember standing.
Was it Brett?
Brett Kissel.
Kissel.
It was Brett Kissel.
Yeah.
And him and I were like standing there and we like got a picture and he's like, oh, what's up? And he's like, do you got any kids? And I was like, yeah, I got 3. And he's like, what do you drive? And I was like, a Suburban. And he's like, my wife and I are looking. And we stood and talked about vehicles. Not that long, probably like 5 minutes, which 5 minutes when there's a lineup of people is like a very long. And I remember after he was like, okay, Suburban. Yeah, okay, I'm going to remember that. And I was like, see ya. Yeah. But it was that connection that was like, oh, cool guy. Nice. Right. And my nerves went away because it was immediately just like, you know,
and if you were like, but what I really want to tell you is I have this podcast.
What I really want to tell you is I'm
Will you
an
come on?
influencer and no, exactly. He would have been like, oh, thanks.
Yeah. But I bet next time you see him, if you see him again, he might be like, we got it. We got the Suburban.
Yeah.
I feel like we traded ours. Sorry, dude.
And that's the thing, is it might feel like there's an opportunity slipping, but I say no. I don't think it is, because I think if you make that genuine connection, people will remember you.
We like to ask our guests a final question, which is, what is the best piece of advice that you can give or that you've been given?
So have I given enough advice? I've quoted a lot of people.
Give us more. You've given us
dad
some
You can
gems.
do both if you want.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about this, but I wonder if I've touched on it enough during this episode. But so one thing that changed in my life just over a year ago is, and I want to preface this by saying, this is not applicable to all situations. Like, not all people have equal opportunity, and systemic oppression is real. And especially the other aspect I would say is like people that are in abusive situations. This does not apply to, and it's our job to make sure that we all fight for equality in this world. But something that I learned for myself a year ago was to genuinely examine situations for what was in my control and what was I saying was out of my control because I didn't want to deal with the consequences of taking those actions. And once I started doing that and genuinely doing things that I previously had been afraid to do, but feeling like but genuinely looking for what was in my control and doing that, my whole entire life changed. So I would say is that sitting back and examining difficult situations and just thinking, am I really stuck in this particular thing? or is there something that I can do? I just don't want to. And when I started flipping that for myself, like my life has like turned on its head in a year just because of that. And looking through everything through its lens. And I feel that I live my life more authentically, and I have more freedom and control. And I choose where my life goes now instead of just reacting to what's presented to me. And it's been really remarkable.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, that's so good.
So for our community who may not know where they can find you, can you tell them where they can find you, how they can work with you, and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So I think the best way would be to follow me on Instagram, which is @deliveryourbest. And I have lots of just tips and tricks I post every day about public speaking. And then if you go to my website, deliveryourbest.com, you can see about all my different type of programs. But my main one is my 10-week program where I put people through. And it's a group coaching program that is awesome. And it totally resolves the fear of public speaking for people. Totally. Which is not a word I recommend people would say.
Totally.
Oh, I'm sure if you've listened to our podcast, you're like, you can chill it on the literalies, the likes,
essentially.
But you know what we did when we first started this podcast is we said, at first we were trying to, edit ourselves, right? And we were like, but then you just become so, like you said, you're thinking about yourself, like while you're talking, like smile and nod and like blink and pace yourself, right? And it's like, it's just not authentic.
Yeah. I do have a thought on it if you
love it.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, yeah.
So I think that people can talk in any way they want to.
Yes.
And that they should be able to express themselves in whichever way they want. What you want to have is control. So you want to feel that when you get into this room, you're choosing to speak this way because it makes your guests comfortable, or it's your way of connecting with each other, and it's how maybe your listeners speak. But it's a choice, so that if you were in a different situation, you could eliminate words that don't serve you. I always say I do not speak the same way that when I'm doing like a very serious media interview than when I talk to my sister on the phone. If I talk to my sister the way that I do media interviews, she would say, who are you? What is happening right now? And sometimes it also feels good to just release that tension of that self-monitoring. But I think that choice should feel available to us. We should never feel that we're stuck speaking in one certain way. And then after that, speak at will.
Love that.
I love that.
So good.
I know.
Drop that mic.
Seriously. No, everyone needs to check her out.
Yeah.
Her content is phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I'm sure
Appreciate
your
it.
coaching program is amazing. I've heard
you.
from others.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. This was a very fast, yes. I don't even know how long it's been, but it's been 2 minutes.
It's over an hour,
Yeah.
and it feels like it just flew by.
Yeah, it was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm honored.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of the Her Podcast. If you want to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at its.her.podcast. We can't wait to see you there.
Bye.
Adios.